Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley. Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode 139, which is entitled A Better Way to Manage Your Media Library with Stuart Brameld. It was published on Thursday, the 1st of August 2019. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England. And because we've got an interview today, there's no David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com. Just a few things before we begin. The first one is to say, if you wouldn't mind, head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, and over there you'll be able to join our mailing lists, you'll be able to join our Facebook group and Slack channel and find out all the things that we do. There's a YouTube channel. Basically everything that we put out in some way, shape or form can be found on that page. The next one to say is go over to wpbuilds.com/deals. This is a page that we put together because various plugin developers and theme developers have reached out and given us coupon codes. We've added a couple more. We've got 50% off the Page Builder Cloud, and we've got 10% off the Katka Pro template packs for Elementor. But it's a little bit like Black Friday every single day of the week. So wpbuilds.com/deals. The other one to say would be go to wpbuilds.com/advertise if you would like to be featured on the WP Builds podcast and get your product or services in front of a wider audience. An example of that would be this. Do you use a page builder to create your websites? The Page Builder framework is a mobile responsive and lightning fast WordPress theme that works with Beaver Builder, Elementor, Breezy and other page builders. With its endless customization options in the WordPress customizer, it's the perfect fit for you or your agency. Go to wp-pagebuilderframework.com today. And we do thank our sponsors for helping us put on the WP Builds podcast. Okay, today on the show we've got Stuart Brameld. He's got a plugin called WP Media Manager. It's really interesting. If you've ever got fed up with the capabilities, the limitations of the media library in WordPress, his solution is going to really make you rethink about what's possible. Not only does it upload your assets to the cloud so it's not running on your server, but it also offers a load of permissions capabilities, the capability to tag things, and a whole load of other things that you probably wished at some point you were able to do. I do need to say at this point that for some inexplicable reason, the audio quality on this recording was particularly poor. Not only mine, but Stuart's audio was a little bit choppy as well. So apologies, it sounds like I'm sort of doing it in a swimming pool or something, so that I can't really bring it back. I've tried to make it sound as good as I can, so apologies for that, but I hope you can cope with it. So without further ado, here's Stuart Brameld. Hello there, welcome to the WP Builds podcast once more. We're on a bit of a different subject this week. We've got Stuart Brameld, I'm going to say Brameld, on the line. Have I got your name right there, Stuart?
Absolutely spot on.
Okay, perfect. And he's, as you probably understood from his accent there, he's based in the UK, which is quite refreshing for me because I don't have to organise crazy times of day to talk to people. He reached out to me recently and he's got a really interesting WordPress product, which I think is a little bit unique. On the face of it, you might well think, I've come across things just like this before. But as we delve a little bit deeper into it, you may be reconsidering. It's a solution for managing files. Your WordPress media library is not involved, so it's quite unique. Stuart, a bit of a dumb question to begin with. Do you want to just tell us what this is, what it's called, where to find it? Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the plugin's called WP Media Manager, and the URL is mywpmedia.com. And the plugin is essentially a file storage solution for WordPress. So think of it as like having a Dropbox within your WordPress WP admin, and then being able to provide Dropbox-like functionality to clients or customers or prospects or users or anyone else that may access a WordPress website.
Okay, great. Now, we're all used to having a media library, and so I suppose that would be the first question that arises. How is this in any way, shape, or form different from the regular media library that we've got in WordPress, which serves us very well indeed? What's the difference between WP Media Manager and the regular WordPress media library?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest difference is that we don't store files within WordPress itself, and there's a few reasons for that. But we offload file storage to companies that specialize in file storage. So the likes of, at the moment, we work with Microsoft Azure and Amazon S3. Most people, I'm sure, have heard of Amazon S3, but they are dedicated, secure, and highly scalable file storage solutions. So whether you want to store 50 megabytes or 500 gigabytes, the plugin works really well with both of those different use cases.
The cost of both of those services, I'm not very familiar with the cost of Microsoft Azure, but I am quite familiar with the cost of hosting anything on Amazon, and it's almost vanishingly small, isn't it? You know, you can put a very, very large amount of data up there, and it costs very little. Have you got any idea on the pricing, just to give us some idea of how much we can dump in a bucket before we're starting to be ramping up large bills?
Yeah, sure. At the very high end of the spectrum, so we've got one client who are using the plugin. They have about 160,000 files. 200 that totals about 200 gigabytes of storage, and they have, I think, 6,000 employees. And the use case for this is that we help run their intranet, which is based on WordPress. And WP Media Manager provides all of the file access and file storage within their intranet solution, within the intranet solution. All of that storage costs about £15 a month.
Yeah, okay.
So
Points
yeah,
made.
it's quite attractive.
Yeah, and the real delight is, of course, the kind of the uptime and the scalability of it. You know, there is basically no ceiling of how much you can put up there, and if you can store 200 gigabytes, presumably that's bandwidth as well. That's people, you know, that's the traffic included as well. So people are uploading, downloading, and it's a lot. It's a very large amount, and it's very affordable. Is Microsoft Azure sort of similarly priced?
Yeah, they're both very, very similar.
Okay.
Yes. We actually moved them from S3 to Azure recently.
Okay. When you began this, you described it as being a bit like Dropbox, which intrigued me, because my sort of understanding of Dropbox is that I've got, well, my primary use for that kind of service, I actually use Google Drive, but the two are very similar, I suppose, is that it syncs things to my desktop, which then are held in a repository on their in their data center somewhere. And if I get a new computer or wish to look at it on my phone or what have you, these things are all kept in sync. I presume that's not what you're doing. You're not sort of syncing files to any remote PC, and then if somebody alters things on the remote PC, it automatically gets sucked up into the Amazon cloud. Is that it? I presume it's not.
No. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. The only slight caveat to that is, if you were to, for example, have to use this for a customer portal or a client portal, and you have, say, a folder for each of your clients, and they log into the website and see all of their content, there are various sort of desktop applications that connect to the likes of Azure and Amazon S3 that allow you to also have those folders on your desktop.
Okay.
So basically, if you were to copy something into the folder on your desktop with this client, it would then obviously upload it to the cloud solution, and it would then appear within your portal. So it's all sort of within sync, which is quite nice. But that's not the primary use case.
Right. So that capability does exist, but with some sort of third-party desktop software. Okay, that's great. So, okay. So why would we want to offload our stuff? I mean, we've heard about how cheap it is. That's a great reason. I can understand that. But then if we think about it, for most people, the media library in our hosting environment within the file structure of WordPress is sufficient. We don't need much more than we pay for. And if we do need more, we just pay a little bit for an extra bit of storage and so on. What are the primary benefits of giving the I don't know, PDF documents, video files, Word document, whatever, any of that stuff over to Microsoft or Amazon in this case?
Yeah, I think I'd say there's probably three. The user interface, I think that people will see if they go to the website and exists within the plugin. There are constraints that exist within the native sort of WordPress media library that makes it not particularly easy to use. I know there are a number of plugins that provide sort of folder and more management structure to the media library, but I wouldn't say that the UX of any of them is particularly fantastic. And that's not any fault of the plugins themselves, but you are constrained by what you can do within the existing media library interface. So the interface that we provided when you go into WP admin for your files and folders is almost exactly what it looks like if you logged into something like Dropbox or Google Drive, and is as responsive as using one of those solutions as well. So I think that sort of user experience is part of it. Scale, as we've talked about, it's not impossible, but there are challenges and concerns in storing huge numbers of files in your media library. And certainly when you get to large files like video or audio files, that often presents challenges because WordPress hosts limit the size of files you can upload and how many files you can upload, and some of them do more based on the size of your media library. And then I'd say security is probably the last one, and probably the thing that we've specialized in the most, partly because my background is in cybersecurity and partly because of the kind of clients we've been working with. But we've done a lot to ensure that even if you store a lot of relatively sensitive corporate information within this file storage solution within WP Media Manager, that information is secured really well through things like encryption and access keys and lots of other technical stuff that you may or may not want to go into.
Yeah, I think we do, actually. We'll come to that in a moment, but let's deal with those points one at a time because they're very interesting. I mean, I do have a bit of a gripe with the media library in WordPress. It's great, you've got a you've got a list view and you've got kind of a thumbnail view, but that's kind of where it ends, and it's completely flat. As you say, there is the capability to bolt on plugins which will enable you to have folders and directories and so on and so forth, but it isn't by default. And that I'm so used to the paradigm of working on the desktop and I've got this nested in here and I've got this folder called videos and inside that are videos about a certain thing, so they're in another directory, and none of that appears in the media library. But are you saying that capability within Amazon and within Microsoft Azure, that's a native capability? You can have folders nested in folders and navigate it in the way you would in Windows Explorer or the Finder?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly within the plugin. It looks almost exactly like it would if you logged into something like Dropbox or Google Drive. Ironically, the Amazon and Microsoft don't actually have a folder structure natively, but the way you name the files provides a folder, and that's completely transparent to any users. So in answer to your question, yes, when you install the plugin, it looks like Dropbox within your WP admin dashboard.
Okay.
I just wanted to touch on another point as well, actually. I thought it was quite interesting. You mentioned some of the constraints of the media library, and what I found quite interesting, or feel like a bit of a trend over the last year or so, which is largely why we've sort of invested a bit of time in building this, is a change in the use cases for WordPress. It feels like in the last year or two that there have been more and more WordPress sites that are not just websites, and people starting to use them for things like customer portals and client portals and membership sites and intranet sites. And maybe it's just my perspective because I'm slightly in this world now, but there seems to be a sort of slight rise out of just WordPress's, just a blogging platform or a website platform. And actually there's lots of other use cases that are very well suited to the platform.
Yeah, I would completely agree. The advent of WordPress 5.1 has actually officially taken it away from being a blogging platform. the official nomenclature is now that it's a publishing platform, and I agree because of its weight. It's kind of being used more and more for CMS type functionality, and so things like client portals and the capability to have this person logged in view this content as opposed to this person logged in who cannot view this content. I think that's more and more what people are using it for. So yeah, I would completely agree. Just stepping back a minute to the security that we were talking about earlier, I guess most people will understand that in WordPress, if you upload an image or a video or a PDF document, it's going to go into your uploads folder, and it's basically visible on the internet. Anybody who stumbles across that URL, whether nefariously or otherwise, has access to it. It's just open. The directory is public. This, I presume, from your third point a moment ago when you talked about security, this is something that we can really do away with WP Media Manager because of the granular security model that these platforms have. Can you tell us how that works? What kind of security features are built in? What capabilities are there around you can view it and you can't, or you can view it for a little bit of time, those kind of things?
Yeah, sure. So the main one is what both Microsoft and Amazon call access signatures, which means that essentially the bucket or the folder, the terminology changes between these providers, but the storage where you store all your files remain completely private online. Obviously, it is on the internet because it's effectively a cloud service. But there's no way of going to, I don't know, mystorage.microsoft.com/my and seeing that file. The only way you can access the files are either within the API key, which we use in the back end in order to be able to manage the files in this Dropbox-like experience, or you use this access key, which is valid for a specific period of time. So that means you can go to mystorage.microsoft.com/my file, and then there's a really long string on the end of it, which is effectively an encrypted signature. And only if you have that string can you access the file, and that string expires after a set period of time, which by default is 20 minutes. Now we actually, within the plugin, automatically generate that string for you, and every time someone accesses the page, every file on that page has a unique string associated with it in order to allow them to access the file. So that's probably the biggest security advantage, as you said, that there's no need to have a effectively public folder or a file listing anywhere on the internet. And then there's a whole host of other things that you can do around that because of the capabilities that exist within these dedicated sort of file storage platforms. So with both Microsoft and Amazon, when you set up a new file storage container, everything is encrypted by default. They manage all the encryption keys for you. You don't have to do anything. You actually have to actively now turn it off. So that's something that is quite nice for more sensitive data. You can restrict access by IP address if it's an intranet solution, for example.
Great.
Only people within the company might want to access it. And that's a really solid way of restricting access to your content, obviously. All of the data is encrypted in transit. It's all done over SSL and HTTPS. And then we've added a few other things within the plugin, which are sort of, I would say, safeguards in terms of preventing people doing things that could be dangerous. So, for example, you have to actively say, I want to list the contents of my root folder before you're able to do that. So if you just try and put in folder / in one of our shortcodes, it won't actually show anything without you actively enabling that feature. So we've taken the security side of things pretty seriously.
And you have a heritage because I don't know if you mentioned the amount of time a moment ago, but your background is in that, isn't it? IT sec, cybersecurity. Yes. What was it, 10 years? I think you said you've been working on
Yes, about 10 years.
Yeah, so that's great. It's good to have you. Well, I think really that's where this plugin sits, is for people who've got sensitive documents that they don't want available publicly on the web. Google finds it. I don't know what kind of data Google Chrome's browser sends back home, but billions of people are using it. So if somebody stumbles across it, I don't know if Google then sort of go out and scrape it. But it is interesting. You've no idea the amount of conversations that I've had. So many conversations based around the idea of, can I restrict access to this? Now, I'm going to ask you about a use case, which is the most common one, because I don't know if your plugin has this capability or not. A very common conversation that I have is, I would like to set up a membership site. My membership site is going to have a course in it. That course is made of videos. I would like to make absolutely darn sure that nobody who has not paid for my course can view those videos. Now, from everything that you've just said, that sounds like it's capable, but I don't know if I can put stuff on the front end of my website with your plugin and it still works, or is it all in the back end in the WP admin area?
No, that's absolutely a use case that we can solve. And yes, you can put it on the front end. So we've actually got a client at the moment who's building a video library, almost exactly the use case you've just described. So taking a step back, the way you add this to a site is through shortcodes, which
Gotcha.
I imagine a lot of people listening to the podcast are aware of sort of how they work.
Yeah, they will be, yeah.
Great. So that gives you an enormous amount of flexibility in terms of how you present the information, where you present it. In your use case, if you have an existing membership plugin or portal, or you want to create a new one, we are sort of technology agnostic in that respect, regardless of whether you choose, I don't know, MemberPress or WP Memberships Pro or any of these other membership plugins. We will work within them because it's literally just a case of embedding a shortcode on a page. And if you have different users that have different access rights, as all these membership plugins can do, you'd put, maybe membership level 1 is one folder and membership level 2 is a different folder, and you put the different shortcodes on different pages, and different people get access to completely different content. And it's a completely secure way of doing things.
So could I use it to embed the video itself, such that somebody comes across my page and they're bona fide, they have a membership, everything's legit, and they want to watch the video, the second video in the course? I guess, is that possible?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We've got a demo page actually on the website as well. If listeners go there, if they're interested, there's a section called Video Embed. And if you click, there's 2 videos in there, and if you click them, they open up in a lightbox.
Yep.
And then you can play them within the lightbox, and there's a download button to download them as well.
Yes,
and
saw that. Yeah.
as I mentioned before, they're also got these access keys. So even if someone was to copy the URL to the video and send it to someone else, it'll expire and they won't be able to use it.
Presumably, they won't be able to use it themselves. That same URL, if they went and copied it into an incognito browser, that they can't watch it themselves. And if for some reason, I can't think of a situation where this would happen because your software takes care of it, but if they were to somehow wait 20 minutes and try to use that same code again, I'm saying 20 minutes because that's the default as far as I understand it, that would break as well. But by going through the API, when they refresh the page, they get a new string appended to the URL, so it all works, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. So this is the solution to locking down your content. It goes into the cloud, onto one of these platforms. You assign permission to it through the WP Media Manager, and then all of a sudden, even if somebody's looking at your video, goes in, inspects the source, takes out that URL, hands it on to their best buddy who hasn't paid for your course, they cannot watch it.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah,
that's great. Now, the last time I dealt with Amazon, I've never dealt with Microsoft Azure, but the last time I dealt with Amazon Web Services, it never ceases to amaze me how many Amazon Web Services there are. There are hundreds. The menu fills the entire screen. How easy is it for somebody who's very low on technical capabilities to go in and set up the cloud side of things, the Amazon, the Microsoft side of things, so that their files are in the right place, so that the plugin is connected? How easy is that? Is this something that you need to be fairly technical with? Do you need to set aside a day or a week? Do we just follow a piece of documentation that you've written?
Yeah, there is some documentation. I'd say I wouldn't even call it. I wouldn't say necessarily technical, but you're right. There is a need to be able to go into either S3 or Azure and create. The terminology again is different, but in S3 you create a bucket, and in Azure you create a blob. Ironically, the most challenging to doing that is finding where to do it, not doing it, because as you said, the menu is enormous. If you've ever seen a big mega menu, this takes things to extreme. So once you know where to do it, it's pretty straightforward. You click the button that says create container or create blob, and you select private, and it gives you a string and a key, and you enter those into the plugin. And from that point onwards, you never have to go into S3 or Azure again. It's literally a one-time setup. If that's a concern to anyone that's listening to your podcast, I'm more than happy to help people through it while we're in these early stages.
Yeah.
But yes, there is a slight overhead, as you said, in setting that up. The nice thing being, once it's done once, and if I do it, it's 5 minutes. If someone else does it, maybe it's an hour.
Yes, finding.
But once it's done, you never have to do it.
Yeah,
so
the menu is prodigiously large. I mean, it is ridiculous why they don't subdivide a lot of those things a bit better. I don't know. But okay, so we go in, we set up our bucket, we set up our blob, we copy the API keys. I'm going to use that term. I don't know if that's correct or not. And we paste them back over into your plugin, which then presumably that's its root. The root of all of its stuff is that blob, that what is it called, bucket. So from that point on, you said that you could close Amazon, close Microsoft Azure, and walk away from it. So now we're back in WordPress. We've opened up the WP admin. How does it all work? Do we have a menu item that we click into and then we see it? Is it like a directory structure? Does it look like WordPress, or do we log into some SaaS platform that you've got set up? How do we interact with it from that moment on?
I'd say the easiest way to describe it is it would be like having Dropbox in WP admin. So you click the link for Media Manager in the left-hand WP admin navigation bar, as you would for plugins or settings or anything else within WordPress. You click that link, and then you see a folder structure that looks like any normal folder structure you would see, and you can drill into different folders, and you can go down a level to a subfolder or a subfolder of a subfolder. Again, as you would within Dropbox or Google Drive, or even on your desktop. And then you have all the standard actions that you would expect on the right-hand side as well. Again, the user interface is actually based on Dropbox, so it looks very similar. But things like renaming files, renaming folders, moving files, moving folders, deleting files, deleting folders, all the standard stuff you would expect is there on the right-hand side and native within the WP admin interface. And it's all cached. So even if you have, as I explained, we've got a client with 200 gigabit of data, even if you're searching for files within WP admin across 200 gig, it's still pretty fast. And if you're moving files, you obviously need a directory structure to move things to. Again, that's pretty fast. So we spent quite a lot of time in terms of how do we deal with this interface when it needs to be working at scale as well.
I watched, just before we did this recording, I watched Stuart actually perform a few of the actions. Did a quick search and so on and so forth. It was quick to the point that I didn't notice any latency whatsoever. It just looked like you type things in and immediately, like it would on my Mac, in all honesty. So that's incredible. Was there a lot of work in that, or is that just a testament to the structure that's going on in the background, or is that just because you're very clever?
No, there was a huge amount of work, and it wasn't me. This is. It's been quite a learning experience, sort of building a plugin over time. It's probably taken a year and a half to get to this point. And a lot of it is things that almost sort of are not seen, behind the scenes, like these things like caching, for example, and the thumbnail generation as well as another one. It's quite challenging to figure out how you do these things so that they're transparent to a user and work like someone would expect them to. And that's particularly challenging because it's as you said, there's not many other solutions that work in this way. And so there are ways of doing things in WordPress for your very technical users, things like transients. So the WordPress way of caching is by using transients. We use them really extensively to ensure that user interface is really fast. The same for things like search. We can't, if you have 100,000 files, we can't go to, if someone types in, I want to look for, I don't know, brand guidelines in the search box within WP Admin, we can't then go to Amazon or Azure and say, give me a list of all the 100,000 files, and then I'm going to search through the one that I need. We have to have that stored locally.
Right.
So that's been a bit of a technical challenge to overcome, but I think we've got there.
But you said that there was a client of yours with what, several 100,000 bits of data, let's call it that, and that's scaling well, is it? It's your search is able to like get through that fog.
Yeah, it works really nicely.
Wow.
Yeah. And
okay.
the WordPress host that it's on is not a hugely powerful host at all. In fact, the dev site runs on WP Engine and it works really nicely.
Congratulations, that's amazing. Are we able to, like for example, simple things that I do all the time in the Finder, which I'm going to use as an analogy here. I click on something, I press Command, and I click on something else, and those two things get highlighted, and I want to drag them to another directory. Is that sort of functionality possible? Can I click and drag, or is it more a question of ticking boxes and then, finding a new directory and then telling it move it there?
Yeah, it's the latter. Unfortunately, there's not a drag at the moment, but you can select multiple files and folders and move them to any other parent folder or subdirectory.
Yeah.
And we also have the ability to tag files and folders as well within WordPress, which obviously is not a standard function within something like the media library. And where we use that is for the ability to select different categories. So, for example, if you have if you used it to create a brand library, as we've had one company do, and you have files for things like logos, photography, iconography, brand guidelines, for example, it might be that some of those things sit across different folders and you want to tag things across folders. So you can do that.
Oh, nice.
You might have, images that are within both icons and brand guidelines, for example. You can tag them as images and then select images in a drop-down field, and it will just go and show you all the images.
Okay, so there's a way of kind of putting a taxonomy on top of the structure of the file itself. You can give them tags. That's great. I didn't know that. Just an aside which occurred to me as we were talking just now. Let's say, for example, I get really wedded to this system and I really like it and everything. This is fabulous. I'm enjoying it. It's working out fine. Am I able to use it for some of the ordinary things that we're used to in WordPress? So, for example, I write a blog post and I want to use a featured image. And the featured image, usually, we find in the media library. Could I use this? Is there an easy way of like just using the WordPress UI and just saying, I want to set this featured image? Is there a sort of cross compatibility there, or would I have to adopt a different system?
You would, at the moment, you would have to use a shortcode to list the file.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit fiddly. I wouldn't suggest doing it. I would say if you need to list maybe, I don't know, five or more files on a page, then it becomes much easier to use a plugin like this. For single files and image embeds, it's easier to use the media library. That's sort of what it's built for.
Yeah. Okay, so it feels to me like this is for people who. It seems to me like the best case for this is securing things, speed, offloading, and security. So with the security model, we're talking about preventing certain people from seeing things and allowing certain other people to see things. And we talked about a membership site. How does that work in terms of actually deploying that? So the familiar system might be, okay, a certain user role has the capability to view this bunch of stuff. A different user role has lesser capabilities. They can only view this portion of it. Do you use like WordPress user roles, or is there a different way, another way?
Yeah, so we because we use shortcodes for listing files and folders, we're pretty agnostic in terms of how someone creates something like a membership site. So and there's actually on the website, there's a section in demo. There's a link to an example sort of membership site, our own one actually, that I use for my agency. And there it just gives you an idea of you can use any WordPress membership plugin you like MemberPress or Restrict Content Pro or any of the other hundreds of membership plugins, and set up a membership site with all the functionality that exists within those. Like if you log in with this user or this role, then you get redirected to this specific page or this home page. We do exactly that for our agency. So if client 1 logs in, they get to a home page called client 1 and it lists client 1's files. And if client 2 logs in, they get to a home page for client 2 and it says welcome client 2 and they get access to their own files. And then the way we do that obviously is you restrict access to the page, and our shortcode is on that page. So you can't get to those files unless you have access to the page.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. I was also kind of wondering on let's say, for example, I have a page which is / repo or something like that. If it's possible for 2 different people logging into the site and having access, both of them, to that exact page, whether they could be viewing 2 different whole loads of content, even though they're at the same URL.
That's more of a membership plugin piece of functionality. Yeah. So I actually use a membership plugin called Active Member 360 because I use Active Campaign for mail. Yeah. And they have exactly that functionality. So you can have a shortcode that says if the user role is this, then show this, and if the user role is something else, then show something else, all on the same page.
I think I'm pushing a bit hard. I think really, aren't I? I'm getting out of the bounds of the scope of what it is that you're actually intending to do. One thing that occurs to me as well, I'm wondering. So, for example, if I want to list a bunch of things on the website, do you have a bunch of pre-made? I don't know, like a shortcode which will dump in like the version of the Finder or Windows Explorer, a file navigator, so you can just copy and paste the shortcode, and there are the files in a nice, easy to manage, clickable way on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely. There's again, almost all based on shortcodes. There's a couple of different shortcodes, 4 main ones actually. Maybe it's worth just describing those. So just to quickly list them off, there's one called list, one called upload, one called cards, and one called embed. So list is a standard folder listing, like you would expect with something like Dropbox. And if you do, the shortcode is WP Media _list folder equals whatever your folder name is.
Yeah.
Photography. You'll get a list of every folder and file that's within the folder photography. The second one I mentioned is upload. This gives you the ability to upload files from the front end into a specific folder. So again, if you have WP Media _folder _upload folder equals photography, someone can upload into the folder photography, the folder called photography. And where that works really nicely is, again, for these sort of client portals, within our own portal, clients can upload to us, or contractors and suppliers can upload to us. Within one of our clients' brand portals, their suppliers can upload to that area as well. And we actually have notifications built in so that when you can say, if I get an upload to this folder, notify this person.
That's great.
Which again is really nice.
Yeah, I can so deploy that like yesterday. That's brilliant. Yeah.
And then there's 2 others, so 3 and 4. So the card view is very similar to the list one, but displays things in a sort of card style, more of a sort of media card style. Mm-hmm. And just to expand on that one a little bit, when you talked about technical challenges, with that, obviously, we need an image to be able to show of each file in order to display it, to make that look nice. Otherwise, it's got we can't display an image, or it's got a blank card there. So we actually generate thumbnail every time you upload a PDF file or an image file. We'll automatically generate a thumbnail for that file. If we can't generate the thumbnail for any reason, like Office documents are notoriously difficult to do that for, unless you can do it. So we can't do that. We then have fallback images. So we have, and we're actually just in the process of having preset SVGs for the icon sets for all of the Office documents.
Great.
And one of the settings in the back end is you can set the colors for them, so it all looks really nicely styled. That's called, and the last one I mentioned was video embed, which you talked about previously. So WP Media _embed allows you to embed either audio or video files. And when you click on the audio or video file, it'll display within a lightbox. You can play the video within the lightbox, or you can download it. It gives you the options to do those as well.
Is there any capability to swap those views on the fly? So, for example, I'm in the folder, the tree structure, if you like, and I'm clicking on directories. But I'm now in the directory called images, and now I want to see thumbnails all of a sudden, not a tree structure. Can I swap those over?
You can't, but we could do that.
Great. Which leads me perfectly over to my next question. Actually, I was wondering. Actually, we should probably pause there and just say a couple of things. This is very new. You're just embarking on this. So the next question I'm asking is, what is on the roadmap apart from the feature I've just requested?
I think the main point of this point is to gather feedback from people using it, because I've had literally a handful. I'd say there's probably 10 clients using it at the moment. Some are really big, as I mentioned, and so we've put a lot of work into being able to solve some of their problems and challenges just because of the amount of content they've got. But I think I feel like I've solved most of the sort of technical challenges, and I think from this point onwards, most of the next sort of month or so is just going to be cleaning up the user interface and making it easier for people to deploy and use the plugin. The interface is pretty simple, but I think it could look a little bit nicer. The other thing I'm considering is whether to offer it almost as a service, so that you don't have to worry about what we discussed earlier around things like setting up Azure and S3, and you just pay whatever it is, £5 a month, and you get 100 gig of storage, and we deal with all the security and setting that up for you. It's a little bit further off, but I'd be, if you've got listeners that are interested, I'd be really keen to hear some of those different use cases.
It's a very exciting project. It's brand new, so new in fact it's not on the wp.org repo yet, although that my understanding is that is a plan. There's no conception yet around pricing because it just hasn't got that far. Maybe in the future there'll be a pro tier, maybe not, who knows. But if this sounded like something that you could make use of, you've got a real burning desire to go and check this out, go to mywpmedia.com, no spaces, no hyphens, mywpmedia.com, and you can reach out to Stuart as well. So Stuart, where on the internet, like Twitter handles, email addresses, whatever you want to disclose, where can we find you if we've got some queries?
I'm digitadelite.co.uk is the main agency website. As you've mentioned, the easiest way is to go via mywpmedia.com and just click either the download button or fill in any of the subscribe boxes throughout that site, and all of them will come to me, and I'll respond pretty quickly. I think I've said I'll get back to you within 24 hours maximum, but more than happy to jump on a Skype call, Zoom call, have a phone conversation and talk through individual requirements.
Oh, that's great. And if you've, like I said, if you've got a need for this kind of thing, you should really go for it, because you're in on the ground floor. Stuart's looking for ideas. He's looking for ways to develop this and to come up with new feature requests. So, if you go and try it, test it, and it's working, but you've got some feature requests, now is the time. So thank you very much, Stuart, for coming on. I know that you've got to go and do something else in about 30 seconds' time, so I'm going to wrap it up and say thanks for coming on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. It was nice chatting to Stuart about his plugin, WP Media Manager, and the things that it can do in addition to the media library, the ability to lock down content, the ability to upload it to Azure or S3, all very nice stuff, and the fact that you can tag your assets as well is very, very nice indeed. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry again about the sound quality. I literally have no idea what went wrong. My best guess is that I accidentally was recording from my Mac microphone rather than my preferred microphone. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events, training and counselling. Please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. Right, the only things I need to mention then are, please join us again next Thursday for a fresh new podcast. Join us again on Monday if you're able to. First thing in the morning, we release the audio podcast of the WordPress Weekly News, the WordPress news from the previous week. And also on the Monday at 2 p.m. UK time, join us in the Facebook group, that's wpbuilds.com/Facebook, where we will have a live episode with some special guests talking about the WordPress news. Normally lasts about an hour, and it's proving to be very entertaining. So yeah, join us for those things if you possibly can. Okay, that's all I've got. I'm going to fade in some cheesy music and say bye-bye for now.